Okay, the issue here is the tip is a bit uh, a bit messy as far as the internal structure. It's not consistent like right here, but I think I can work with it. I think I'll be able to skin off the unpredictable area here. Okay, I'm just at this stage I need to get it a little thinner, so I'm going to set up this edge a little bit better for flakes. Now that I'm getting used to the antler, I can create a better edge for the antler. Now, as you're watching this, some people will see certain things and some people won't. Some people will look at this type of pressure flaking and say, oh, this is better done with copper. And this, another person can look at this and say, the best way to do this is with antler. So you get opinions depending on your cognitive bias. Actually, it doesn't really matter, right, what tool, as long as you're skillful with it. And right now, the antler is softer than I'm used to because I've been using hard tools. So I'm abusing the tip on this. I use a split cobble for abrading. It takes longer though with natural materials to do the dressing on the tools. Now, can I do this thinning with pressure flaking? Can I do a lot of thinning? Yeah, you can if you use a lot of pressure. But very rarely do the flakes go past halfway with pressure. Normal pressure flaking, if you have an abnormal amount of strength or skill, you can get them to go past halfway. But that's the beauty of indirect percussion or percussion, is you can apply a lot more force. So you don't have to be abnormally strong or abnormally skillful to get those thinning flakes. Okay. This is getting dimpled and notched. All right, I usually don't like that because this is what happens in many cases. It does a little gouge out or scoop out because of that dimple. Or the little notch. But you can get used to the notch and then not have it do that. It's not a given that it will always do that with a notch in the end. You can make the adjustment in your skill so that that won't happen. I gotta watch that I don't install a curve into this. I think I may have to just leave that little furrow down in there. Yeah, I'll just leave it. Might be able to get it later, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. Now when I said I'm taking some time to make the edge better for Antler, I just make it more consistent. So I don't have to be trying to figure out where I can set this tool. Just have the edge more consistent so that just about anywhere will be okay. Now this is going to probably end up a little bit thicker than 6:1 because I'm having to hit this extremely hard to remove flakes, and I don't want to break it on video. One of the adjustments to the natural tool is you got to hit harder because it absorbs some shock. And when you hit harder, the upper ranges of force are a little more chaotic. Just got to watch out for unexpected shocking events. Like you may not engage the platform like you want. It may be too aggressive, and that's a shocking event on the piece. Now, if I isolate platforms, would it make it easier to remove that flake? Yeah, it probably would. But then again, I would lose more width than I like to lose. And it is important to think about that, especially with these, when you're trying to conserve material and you don't have all that much material for the price. That sort of thing. The way I usually have worked my stone in the past is very carefully as far as trying not to waste too much. But at the same time being very aggressive. But there is a balance point there. So I'm still hitting really hard, right? So I'm risking breaking it, but I'm using the type of platforms that will conserve the width. For the most part. I'm going to have to take it back just a little more to strengthen it a little more. I've got some crushing. Right there on that strike. I need a good clearing flake here to thin it down more. And I'm switching back and forth between these different stones for abrading, just to get the feel for each one. Some of them will abrade better than others. Like this is a very subtle, this is a medium to soft sandstone. It's a very subtle abrading. This is a little bit harder sandstone. It's a little bit more aggressive. And this quartzite, about the same as the sandstone. It's not. It seems like it might be more aggressive. I was trying it earlier, but it's about the same. All right. Let's see if I can do this without breaking it. Now to continue, I would have to take back the edge a lot more. So I'm going to move on to a different spot. Sometimes you can sneak up on the thick areas from another angle. I hesitate to hit from the base because I have to use quite a bit of force. And it will snap. Could try to come in at an angle. When you hit at an angle, it's a little bit less of a risk of snapping. So if I'm able to do an angled flake, maybe that'll do it. Well, it did it. It just overshot. Yeah, that's an overshot. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, but I could have been more gentle with that and ended up with a thicker piece. Okay. Now, how do you end up with thin pieces with natural materials? Again, you end up with that with skill. The material itself has something to do with it, of course. If it's got trouble spots, or or if it's prone to snapping, of course that's going to affect it somewhat, but you can make adjustments for that in your skill. Now, I knew that that last snap, I knew that was a possibility, right? Because I could tell that I was using an enormous amount of force to get these flakes to remove. But I went for it anyway because there was a possibility, good possibility it would stay together. Now, could I isolate some platforms on here and make it a little easier to remove the flakes? Yes, but I don't want to end up with something like this. I want to get it as large as possible. Now you could say, well, the largest possible technique is not going to be very good because you're going to do a lot of damage control and all that, and it's going to get small anyway. So why not just take it back and isolate some platforms? Well, yes, that is good advice for someone that does not wipe out platforms. That's another thing. If I have something sticking out as a platform, I tend to wipe out that thing that sticks out and nothing else happens. Now, that's something I need to overcome in my flint knapping, but I probably had to spend an entire year doing it, like I've done with other types of techniques. Like I spent an entire year learning how to minimize my step fracturing. So I'll probably have to spend a long time learning how to minimize my platform destruction, so to speak. So yeah, I'm not saying it's bad advice to do it that way. I'm just saying that I have trouble doing it that way. Okay, again, with the amount of force that I'm using to remove these flakes, the danger of overshot is there. With this material, and if I back off on the force, it's not going to be as thin. So I have to find that line and tread it very carefully. Because I do need to show you how to get it thinned down. You can see pieces of stone embedded into the flaker. You just got to watch out for those because it'll slip when it encounters one of those. So I can rotate this flaker so that I don't encounter those, but eventually I have to grind those out. It slips enough as it is. It's a combination of percussion and abrading. When using my abrading stones, I hit like this instead of doing this kind of thing. I hit because I'm also using direct percussion to remove some of the weak areas. So this is a combination of percussion and abrading, in case you're wondering. I have smaller tools as well that don't require as much well, something like this requires more force because there's more mass to it to get it up to speed. It requires more force just to get up to speed. You don't have to use as much force on a smaller piece, but this breaks easier than this. Okay, next segment. And the reason why I say this, why I'm worried that this will break, is because I don't want it to break. Right? I don't want it to break. This is better used on something that is easier to nap. Like obsidian. Okay. Or some kind of heat treat. Okay. I'm not going to push the issue on that. I wanted to try to get rid of that lump, but it's not cooperating as far as the robustness of the edge. I tried to make the edge more robust. I'm going to have to take it back too far to get rid of that lump, so I'm just going to leave it. And yeah, it is because of the softer tool tip. To make the adjustment to get that off, I would need to start with a wider piece, just so that when I encounter something like that, losing width is not going to be a big deal. That's how you deal with it. It appears that the edge just isn't strong enough at a thin state to be able to accommodate a soft flaker to remove a lump like that. With a harder flaker, yeah, I could probably do it. Okay. Now I just got to get a pressure flaker with a thinner tip and finish this out. Same deal with these. You don't want to hear too many crunches. You just want to hear a nice clean snap. I'm trying to thin and shape at the same time. And am I having difficulty with the Antler? Yes, because it's much softer. And at the same time I'm trying to chip the stone. The stone is wearing away the tip of my flaker. So the tip of the flaker is changing with each major pressure flake. The shape of the tip of the flaker is slightly changed. But again, with skill, you can get used to that. So it doesn't make much difference. But I'm not used to it yet. And I'm also experiencing the antler gripping where I don't want it to grip. So it produces these little short flakes and some of the step fracturing. Like that step fracture right there and that one right there. They're common on artifacts, but they're annoying for modern nappers. But I'm getting that because it's the antler tip is gripping into the edge more than I want it to. I'm thinking that it's going to be sliding a little bit and allowing me to push with more force, but it's grabbing and picking it right off before I can develop a good pressure flake. So I got to be more skillful in preventing the tip from gripping too much. It's just a matter of compensating. I'm probably going to have to repeat that over and over again. You got to compensate. If it's not doing what you want, you just learn to compensate so it starts doing what you want. So I'm trying to sharpen and shape at the same time. Shape, sharpen, and thin. I don't want this piece to get small. A lot of you guys are having trouble with that. Creating briquettes and almond-sized pieces, that kind of thing. All right, I'm going to try one more time to get into that lump with a pressure flake. All right, so I'm going to lose some symmetry because this edge is going to be going in further. It's going to dip down probably into that lump, but I don't care. I want to see if I can get rid of that lump, or at least some of it. Well, I shot one right there, but it didn't do anything, so I'll just leave it. Time for notching. A little bit of a learning curve. Notching this material with the antler. The notcher is not able to grab as well as I can with other materials because it is softer, and I'm encountering that same type of situation where it has a weird crushing. Sometimes in general it's easy to pressure flake, but when it comes down to precise pressure flaking and exactly the spot you want, it gets a little bit dicey. Like I want it exactly at the bottom of that notch, and it tends to want to crush a little bit too much ahead of time before you actually push off a flake. But if you can get it to grip the edge properly, you can push off some good flakes. You just can't let it. You can't let it think about it too much. I don't know how to explain it, but the material likes pressure flaking a little bit on the aggressive side. A little bit too aggressive, but that's okay. It was a aggressive pressure with a little bit too much pressure. That's why the barb was removed accidentally. I think I might have removed just a little bit more, but that's okay. I'm going to fix the symmetry here in a little bit. And as I get better with the material, I can make narrower notches. So you can see how punishing the material is on the antler. Until I get used to being able to work with the material to know how I can weaken it so it's not putting up such a fuss. Weaken it without weakening it too much. Gotta thin down the base just a little bit. Thin down the stem just a little bit more. I'm going to try an indirect percussion flake. With the more gentle tool. I'm just testing it right now. Testing a little bit on the sides before I go for the major flakes. Just need one more. Oh no, I think that fits. Yeah, okay. All right, now it's just a matter of finishing it up. Okay. A little bit too much crunching there, but I guess it's okay. Should be just little slight pops. I think I'm going to use some indirect on the edge just to get it some of those thick spots taken down. And then I'll be done. Yeah, a couple of indirect strikes after that thinning. Okay. And edge work. Let's see if this flaker will cooperate. It's a little bit different hardness to it. Alrighty. So I went over the top of that lump, so it looks a little bit better. Okay, it's not very symmetrical, but I think I'm going to call it good. Maybe a few more pop outs. Yeah, it tends to not like the extremely precise attempts to flake in a small area. But I can overcome that just by walking it in from a little bit further off. Chip my way into the area that I want to affect. Okay, I'm out of time. So that's it. That ladle dart point is probably 5 to 1. I don't know if I have time to measure. Inch and 1/8. Yeah, by just a little over 3/16. Yeah, 3/16. So we can do the math. Okay. That's it.